Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a senior and accomplished sales professional from North Virginia, USA, Katie Nelson. Katie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Ashutosh. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Katie is the Chief Executive Officer of Sales Uprising. She's a three-time business owner who is committed to bringing the fun back into sales. So, Katie, my first question, what inspired you to start your entrepreneurial journey and how did you get into sales?
I love this question, and they're not related.
Mhm.
My, I'll take the last portion of the question first.
Mhm.
I got into sales, I really think, because I grew up in a house with parents who own their own businesses. And way back then, say early 80s, business ownership wasn't what it is today.
Yep.
Ev- You know, it wasn't a cool thing, it wasn't a hip thing, it was just something that people did. And so my parents would sit around the table, like most business owners, and wonder about their contracts being outsourced,
Mhm.
or if they were going to lose a contract, or if they were going to be able to make payroll. And I
Mhm.
guess somewhere in my little brain, in my formative years, I thought, you know what they need? My people need a great salesperson, so they
Mhm.
never have to worry about this.
Yeah.
So I really think that's how I went into
Wow.
sales.
Mhm.
And then my entrepreneurial journey started on accident.
Okay.
Uh, I wasn't planning on owning a company, but I had entered into an industry that I did very well at
Mhm.
in business development. And I had one of my mentors come to me and say, "Hey, I'm going to start a business.
Mhm.
And I can't imagine doing this with anyone other than you.
Mhm.
And so how would you like to own a business?" And I was
Mhm.
like, "Sure, buddy." Because my job didn't change. I was still
Mhm.
business development. So sure, absolutely, let's go do that. And so that's how the first company got started.
Amazing. Amazing. And can you share a pivotal moment in your career that shaped your approach to sales and business growth?
Yes. When I first got to Northern Virginia, because I grew up in Arizona
Mhm.
in the United States,
Yeah.
and I started my first job here, it was a commission-only sales job.
Mhm.
And so you only got paid what you could sell, and I didn't know anything about that life necessarily.
Mhm.
And I knew no one that would be purchasing. I worked at that time for a woman-owned small business that was an office supply company. So we were competing with Staples and Office Depot. And what I realized is that is, even though I sold products,
Mhm.
that is the very position for those 3 years where I recognized how important relationship was in the sales model,
Mhm.
right? So previously, everything had been very transactional,
Mhm.
and it wasn't until, I don't know, it was some odd years ago that relationships really became a part of my sales career, and it made such a difference.
Amazing. So let's now talk about Sales Uprising. Tell me why you created Sales Uprising and what is the mission?
The mission of Sales Uprising is for every small business, like this is where I'll
Absolutely.
get really excited, right? Is for every small
Yes,
business owner to like fight their own demons
correct.
about sales and have
Mm.
their own sales uprising to make the money that they need to make and then want to make.
Mm.
Um, how did Sales Uprising get started? After my second business,
Mm.
we were doing very, very well. We generated multiple seven figures in less than 3 years. And when I had the opportunity to decide what I wanted to do after that particular success, I really thought about what I love doing, which is creating relationships that are profitable in business.
Mm.
And not in this like sharky way, but in this community way. And what I noticed is that, business owners come to the table with their own expertise, but
Right.
very rarely is that expertise selling, which
Mm.
is a pivotal part of the success of any business.
Yeah.
So I was thrilled to instead of going and catching fish or in terms of sales or teaching a team how to go
Mm.
catch fish, I wanted to now help the business community feed themselves through
Mm.
selling their expertise.
Mm. Wow. And given all the work you do with so many business owners, what are some of the biggest misconceptions you have seen about sales?
What a great question. And, to some extent,
Hmm.
every person comes with their own perception, fear, stories about sales, even if they've never done it.
Hmm.
So, but some of the big ones are I don't want to do that. I don't want to
Hmm.
be like that. So when you think about the crazy marketing around the used car salesman or the snake oil
Yeah.
salesman,
Hmm.
this is somehow in global society's
Hmm.
mind as to that's what sales is, or
Yeah.
it's like hardcore haggling and negotiation. And it can be, and it doesn't have to be bad.
Hmm.
All of that is um, each individual personality comes to sales as its own.
Yeah.
If you're not a pushy person, you won't be a pushy salesperson. It's
Hmm.
almost impossible.
Yeah.
I could challenge you to try that, and you'd have no idea what that looks like.
Absolutely.
And um, I would say that pushy salespeople are hired. They
Hmm.
sell.
Yeah.
They're successful because they own who they are in that process. So I think the biggest misconception, if I had to boil it down, is that people have to be something other than they are when
Hmm.
they really don't.
Hmm. Absolutely. And as I was reading about you, it took me back 4.5 decades when I started my career with British American Tobacco India. And I remember in those days, everyone used to say, I want to be in branding, I want to be in marketing, but I don't want to go in sales. So my next question is, what is the number one sales mistake that keeps businesses from reaching their revenue goals?
Believe it or not, isn't it funny how things just haven't
Yeah.
changed? The more they change, the more things stay the same.
Hmm.
Uh, I think it's kind of twofold and it's dependent. So it's contextual. It
Hmm.
depends on where you are in business and what your goals are. So on the sales side, it could just be you're not putting in the work.
Hmm.
I think the reason why people think branding and marketing are where they want to be is because it's a lot less outreach. There's a
Hmm.
lot less, I mean, it's work to sell things.
Yeah.
People don't just decide, hey, let me jump in your pocket and pay you some money.
Correct.
You know, uh, on the marketing side, I think there is the mistake that marketing sells for you.
Hmm.
In business, these are two separate business functions.
Yeah.
Marketing absolutely is a place where you can get market awareness, where you can, to some extent, get know, like, and trust based on consistent output of content. But it's not the place where it's not the business function where anybody is going to pay you. It
Right.
will always be an expense for your business.
Hmm. Well said. You also assert that every business action is a sales conversation. Can you help me understand this and give me an example if possible?
Sure. Uh, so say you have a networking event and
Hmm.
you're meeting people for the very first time. In that very first interaction, first impressions matter. People are going to decide within a modicum of time whether or not they even want to further the relationship with you. So that's in the very beginning. You don't even have a chance at a deal if you don't get that right, potentially,
Hmm.
right?
Yep.
And then say you're working with your client and you've worked with your client for 10 years. The reason why every conversation is a sales conversation is because you're still looking to have that client.
Hmm.
And if your engagement is over, what about the next one?
Hmm.
It just doesn't stop,
Hmm.
right? It's the continuance and furtherance of the relationship,
Yep.
and then the relationship through delivery, and then sales again, and then delivery. So it's a continuum.
Well said. Well said. And Katie, what role does storytelling play in an effective sales communication conversation?
What a beautiful question. You know, Ashutosh, I will tell you that for the longest time, I didn't see how storytelling worked. Like I didn't understand. And I went to some friends of mine who know me very well, professionally and personally. And I said, what is this whole storytelling thing? I
Hmm.
don't think I have that. I don't know what that is. I'm going to
Yeah.
have to practice. I'm going to need to read a lot of books. And they laughed at me, like to my face. And I said, "What?" And they said, "Katie, you tell stories to your people all the
All the
time."
time. Yeah.
And I said, "Oh, can you give me an example of what you're talking about?"
Yeah.
And so it is wildly important that as you're creating a relationship in the beginning, in the middle, in the end, that you are creating spaces of commonality,
Mm.
right? And how you best do that is through storytelling.
Yeah.
And the best stories, in my opinion, so storytelling and sales have a lot in common. One
Mm.
of the things is in sales, you have to listen more than you talk.
Mm.
And so once you understand how someone is speaking to you and you're absorbing that information, you can then understand how they like to be spoken to
Mm.
be able to even tell a story they can hear,
Mm.
right? So,
Yeah.
and it's just so important. It's how we create understanding and expectation and agreement or disagreement,
Yeah.
how we choose to move forward through any disagreement or say yes to an agreement. It's intertwined with everything that we do. And I
Mm.
think that's kind of just in the world. It's not even specifically a sales thing.
Amazing. What a great response. Thank you. You also talk about the difference between working in a business and on a business. Tell me about this and what is your philosophy on this business?
When you are smaller, the delineation between in and on is you're not thinking about it. And we should think about it more because when you are, so there's a book, E-Myth and E-Myth Revisited, right? These are great books that talk about the different types of hats that we wear in our business. And
Mm.
so working in your business is when you're a technician or you're the manager. Working on the business is when you're the president, founder, or CEO.
Mm.
And the biggest job of the president, founder, or CEO is to hold the vision of the business itself, the growth of
Right.
the business, what you want for the business, how that uh, weaves in and out of your life personally, and how it's going to affect the people around you. When you're in the business, you're boots on the ground, as they say, beating the
Mm.
streets, looking for deals, looking for amazing partners. Like
Mm.
that's all the activity
Yeah.
in your business. And it's so important to take the time to
Mm.
make sure that the activity that you're doing is for the betterment of the business, because
Right.
especially when you're small and you may not have a big team or another partner to run it by, it's very easy to get off track and you may never have if you don't, you will have left the path that you were on to success. It
Correct.
could take you to another success,
Correct.
but by the fact that you got off the path means you got to start all over.
Mm. Well said. And what is your perspective on sales automation tools? How should businesses use them without losing their personal touch?
I love sales automation tools. I mean, our brains are only so big. And
Mm.
if you are the person, if you are in sales, if you are the business owner and you have what you hold is like all of the client information, the juicy human stuff in your brain, you
Mm.
need some help. So let's outsource it to an automation.
Mm.
How you do that without losing a personal touch is you communicate what that looks like to your
Right.
client.
Right. Yes. Yes.
Right? You just let them know, oh my gosh, so this is what it's going to, thank you so much. I'm so
Mm.
excited to work with you. This is what it's going to look like going forward. Right?
Mm.
You'll see these emails from me. You'll see
Yeah.
this, you'll see this, like whatever that looks like. Just let your people know up front and they'll never think anything of it.
Mm. How interesting. And what are some key strategies you teach so that businesses can help increase their sales without feeling too pushy?
Mm. Uh, the number one thing that I teach for salespeople and business owners to get through this
Mm.
is to actually do it.
Mm.
I know it's not complicated. Uh, Literally, I challenged them to a 30-day
Mm.
uh, practice where they don't do any of their marketing. They
Mm.
are not out networking. They are literally building their sales calls list. They're making those sales calls. And more importantly, they're collecting the data from what happens in those calls
Mm.
because it will be through that that they recognize, oh, I, I'm not pushy, or I am, and it worked. Like it's all just the story that they tell themselves before they actually do the work.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well said. My next question for you, Katie, is what are some leadership qualities essential for driving a high-performing sales culture?
What a great question. I can only speak from my own experience,
Yeah.
having been a high performer on a sales team, as well as growing some of my own.
Mm,
For me, I think I want to know that you've done it before.
hmm
Like, don't push me out in the streets and be like, yeah, I'm protected all the way back here in the office. Like, I've never had to deal with rejection or a slump in my sales. Like, I want to know that you understand what I have to go through as a salesperson. It's a very basic thing, but it goes
mm,
so far to creating camaraderie and understanding in a sales team because your slumps are going to happen. You're not going to hit it out of the park every single time. It's
yeah.
just, it's statistically impossible.
Mm,
So,
mm,
so let's all get together on the same page. So
yeah.
I think it's really important that whoever is managing the team, the leader of the team, whether that's the business owner or a manager or vice president, does really understand what it's like to come from that place and to do that, do it well, and have bad days, first and foremost, just as a foundational piece.
And I've often seen the organizations that I have worked in or advised, there's always a we they between sales and marketing. How can sales and marketing work together to drive business growth? Because I've often heard salespeople say, but we bring in the revenue.
Yes, it's very much a big sister, little sister, big brother, big brother, little sister. It's very much a
Yeah, yeah,
right.
yeah.
It has very much that feel. It's so easy to point your finger somewhere else.
Mm, mm,
What I always think is that, so I would challenge companies to try this if they're bigger companies. I would say, fantastic.
mm,
Match up your marketing people with your salespeople. Have
mm,
your salespeople try and live a day in
mm.
your marketing people's shoes
Yeah.
and then have your marketing people go out with your salespeople and live a day in their shoes. Because I think there's just a very basic misunderstanding about the two functions. At the end of the day, the most successful businesses will be the one where marketing and sales love each other. They have an amazing handshake, and
Mm,
it's literally like running a relay race between sales and marketing. You're
mm,
passing off the baton and then passing off the baton, and
mm.
it's very, it should be like that.
Correct.
Synergistic, I guess is the word
Absolutely.
I'm looking for.
Absolutely. Well said. And what is your view on the role of social media and digital marketing in today's sales strategies?
I think what a big topic, right? You could have an entire year on the topic of
Correct.
social media and business and
Mm,
humans.
mm,
Um, I think that you can use it in so many ways. The
mm,
most appropriate ways are the ways that align with the vision for your company.
mhm,
So so this is where you're working on the business instead of in the business is really important. I don't think all social media platforms are for all businesses.
mm.
You're going to need to make sure you have a very clear understanding of your target market and where your target market hangs out.
Yeah.
Not everybody hangs out on each platform.
Mm,
And it's one of the places for small businesses that it really has the ability to eat up our runway,
mm,
right? You only have so much time, energy, and money to get your business off the ground. And if you are spending it on or in social media, it is such a place where you can get it so wrong so quickly,
mm,
and your business doesn't even have the opportunity to take
mm,
off. So I just, I think that social media absolutely has a place from content creation to creating the beginnings of a relationship. You can get into each other's DMs and start having conversation. And when we talk about how many touches or outreach, how much outreach it takes to create a relationship with a potential client, there's absolutely a place for that, but it does need to align with who the people
mm,
you serve, like
mm.
where they hang out and what they're looking for.
Well said. So I have time for two more questions for you. How do you balance the art of selling with the science of sales data and analytics?
I think I handle it very well, sir. No, I so this is one of my favorite things about
Mm,
sales,
mm,
especially for business.
yeah.
It is both,
Mm,
right? Bots don't buy.
mm,
So we're sales in all of its formats
mm,
is the most human of the thing. It's
correct.
how we so and that will never change
Mm,
as far as I can tell. It probably will not change in my lifetime.
mhm,
So um it is wildly important that you understand your data.
mm,
And in the beginning, you won't. In the beginning, you have no data. This is true if you're a brand new salesperson and they ask you that silly question, can you give me a sales forecast? And you're like, I just got here. I don't even, what do you mean?
yeah.
So, how do you create that? Go take a look at historical data, both your own personal data as a salesperson and for that product or service in that market that you're going to be selling to. It
Right.
can answer so many questions for
Mm,
you
yep.
and therefore bring you peace once you know this information.
Amazing. And my last question for you, Katie, I want to come back to Sales Uprising. You have helped many businesses transform. Can you share a success story that stands out?
Absolutely. This is when, so Sales Uprising, thank you for the opportunity. Sales Uprising will be 9 years old this year.
Wow,
And I'm very,
congratulations.
very proud of that.
Mm,
And I'm going to talk about one of my favorite stories. And it was from the very, very beginning.
mhm,
I had met a woman at a coffee shop. This isn't like the first 6 months of my business. And
mm,
so I'm just figuring it out. And I had just started my mastermind and we're having a cup of coffee. Like literally, we commented on each
yeah.
other's coffee. This was not,
Mm,
I was not meeting her. I met her for the first time. We got into a lovely conversation, and it turns out she's working hither, thither, and yon, cobbling things together that are passions for her in an effort to generate income for her family and her house. And so we got talking and I gave her a couple ideas and she called me back and she ended up becoming a client. And I
wow.
said, "Why did you become a client?" And she said, "Because what I want to do is focus and move forward." And ultimately, in addition to her income, she wanted to be able to take her kids on vacation, free and clear and have experiences with them.
Mm,
And I think it was within the first year and a half of working together, she was able to buy a Disney cruise during like New Year's week
mm,
for she and her kids, which is not inexpensive, all through the success of the revenue from her business
wow.
instead of savings or a credit card or anything like that. And so at its smallest, that's what I'm looking to do.
Amazing. What an amazing story to end with, Katie. But I want to say thank you so much for speaking to me about your own amazing journey. I've always been a great fan of sales, and I think you talked to us about many different aspects of sales, starting with misconceptions to the number one sales mistake. You talked to us about working in a business versus on a business. You spoke to us about storytelling and the importance. You spoke to us about automation, about data analytics, and how it is important for sales and marketing to tango to be able to get the best possible results for the organization. Thank you for speaking to me and good luck to you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.